So you've taken some time and you've actually gone through, you've installed Xplane, you picked the scenery you want, you got everything ready to go, but you probably noticed there are no shortcuts to Xplane 12. This is an Xplane thing going back since the beginning. So what I'm going to do is set up an Xplane shortcut. I'm on Windows here, so what I'm going to do is open up Windows Explorer. Easiest way to do this for me is to do Windows key and E together. That's going to bring up a little lovely window that looks like this. I'm going to head over to the folder where I keep my Xplane 12, and the one you're looking for is going to be xplane.exe. Now, I'll show you a fun little hacker trick here. If you right-click and drag and you let go, there's a button that says Create Shortcuts here. If you do that, now you have yourself an Xplane 12 shortcut ready to go. So in the event that it did not install one into your Start menu, you can hit it right away. Let's go ahead and fire up that Xplane, shall we? Now, at the main menu, if this is the first time you've ever run Xplane 12, what will actually happen here is there will be a whole experience where you get to see a zoom in, and then you'll be inside a Cessna 172, and it'll be rainy and everything. But you hit enough escape keys, you're going to end up here. The way this is broken down is really straightforward. You have the flight lessons in the middle here, very useful. I like what they're going with this. Little ways to go, but not too bad. You have your settings over here on the right, and of course, we can create a new flight, load some flight, and all that, everything else in between. So what I'm going to do is actually start by going to settings. Now, there's a lot of different settings at your disposal in Xplane. One of the popular settings that people like to kind of play around with a little bit here is, of course, playing with your sound. You can see my volume's up all the way. If you wanted to bring that down a little bit, you can. There's some stuff in here for sound devices, radio devices, especially if you have like an extra, headphones or something like that. But the place I want to start with here is actually the graphics page. Now, people always say, hey, what computer do you have? Well, if you're curious, it's a 14850K. It's a good old-fashioned one of those lovely Intel chips. It's a 4090 is going to be the chip that's inside here as far as RTX goes. 64 gigabytes of RAM. Everything's on a solid state, and we're working at a basically a 2500 resolution kind of a thing like that. So if you're wondering where stuff is coming from, that's where it's coming from. Now, one of the things I want to point out here is if you scroll down here a little bit, you're going to observe that there are actually multiple monitors on my computer. You can see I've got three. It basically grabs this right out of Windows. And you'll notice here my main monitor is set to full screen simulator. And of course, you can dial in the resolution if you want to, as well as the very important field of view, which is going to vary. Honestly, it depends on the airplane. But one of the things you see here is we can see that there's a couple different panels you can do. You can do a 2D panel. One of the reasons I love this is I can come to this guy and I can actually make this a 2D panel, which I think is so cool because this is exactly why I have this little monitor. You can't see this here, but this is a very, very small monitor. I mean, probably 12 inches, 11 inches kind of thing like that. But that's where you can go ahead and change the settings. A very popular thing to do is to switch this over to windowed mode. If you take a look now, I've got this lovely ugly bar going across the top here. That's perfectly fine because I'm on desktop recording mode. So this is kind of the way that I usually fly. But for the sake of us, I'm going to put it on full screen here. I'm going to leave network alone. Data input and output you can leave alone. Joystick, you're going to want to stop here and you're going to want to take some time. I really like the way that they do the joysticks here. There's a couple different components to it, and you can see I've got everything set up. But the short version is when you press the calibrate key, it's going to bring up a screen that looks like this. All you have to do now is just wiggle all your controls, push your buttons, play with your joysticks, your numbers, and then, of course, if there's anything you don't use, you can come right in here and hit ignore. I'm actually going to hit cancel there because I don't want to mess up my piece. Now, the other thing you'll probably notice is there's a bunch of axes on the left, and there's a bunch of hat switches and things like that on the right. It's telling me I have to do this one. I'm not going to worry about that kind of a thing like that. But the cool thing here, and what I really like about this, is once you bound something, for example, if I start moving my roll back and forth, you can see my roll axis. If we go like this with pitch, you can see my pitch axis. And of course, if I scroll down a little bit, you can see my level yaw axis. That's my wheelbase axis and everything along those lines. Now, what I really like about Xplane is if I want to bind a control as far as buttons goes, if I just click a switch real quick, it highlights the button I pressed. So if I press this button, it's hold brakes regular. If I press this one, it's hold brakes maximum. If I were to hit this guy right here, you can see it's my servo toggle. If I press this, it's going to make my views. I can do different zooms and everything along those lines. Now, let's say I wanted to bind this to something here. So all I have to do is press the button on my joystick. It highlights it. I click on the edit button, and you can actually search for what you want to do here, which I think is awesome. So, for example, if I wanted to do, I call it a Wonder Woman view kind of a thing. If I wanted to do forward with HUD, for example, and if I press the apply key, you can see that that button is now associated with forward with HUD, and now it's ready to rock. If I wanted to delete that, I could hit that real quickly there, hit cancel, and everything would basically blank out for it. Now, the crazy thing here is if I go in here, you can actually see that there are different setups for different components here. Again, I have multiple joysticks, I have multiple control panels, and as you can see, plenty of buttons that do nothing because I haven't taken the time to go, or to be honest, I've never really needed them. Now, another thing I really like about X-Plane is if you come over here to keyboard, if you're trying to find something, you can just type in its name and it'll look for it. But if you're not sure what a key does, you can come to search keys and you can press like the C key and that'll say, hey, that's your free camera. What about F9? F9, lean the mixture a little bit. Oh, that's a good one. I think F8's my favorite one here. There it is. F8, mixture to cut off. And everything is basically built in here for you. Oh, we have some nice accessibility if you want to change the size of the font. We also have VR controls as well. I don't use VR right now. Obviously, it would be very awkward for you to see what I would see, kind of a thing. But VR stuff is really, really cool. And they do a really nice job of it. So with that all taken care of, everything's looking great. It's now time to set up a flight. Now, you'll notice that the number of aircraft here is a little different than the number of aircraft you have over in Flight Sim. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that actually helps make things a little bit simpler. Let's say we wanted to fly something real simple today. I'll go ahead and grab the Cessna Skyhawk. You have a couple variations on it. And one of the cool things here is you can sort all the stuff up at the top. But one of the things I really like is if you come down here and press Customize, there's a couple different things you can do here. First of all, you can pick the different airplanes here. You can change its livery up here. If I want scratches, I like that because it's all bent up. I love that stuff. But the other thing you could do is down under weight, balance, and fuel, you can set its total fuel weight. You can even do some de-icing. I can say it's got a 10-minute holdover time just to make it a little bit safer for that purpose. And the crazy thing is if you have aircraft with different fluids, you'll know what I mean if you open up the Cirrus later on, but that's for another video. That would be covered down here as well. And it actually remembers that each time I open this airplane. There's also a little switch here at the bottom that says start with engines running. If you press that, your engines will started. If you shut that off, it goes away. It's nice and simple. Like I said, I love that. If we want to pop back to the main menu, just hit pop back to the main menu like that, and it takes you here. But you can see that everything I just did, if I come back in here, it's still saved. So it's not that big of a deal. Like I said, I kind of like that, right? So I can go back to my list if I want to pick an airliner or something. So airports, super simple. But the thing I really like about airports and kind of the way that they do this is if you scroll all the way to the bottom, do you see how I have things like helicopter start, gravel strip start, carrier approach, oil rig approach, all that stuff is all ready to go for you. That's where that's all basically hanging out in case you want it. But for me, I'm actually going to do Wyndham today. Now, let's say we want to control where in Wyndham we actually want to fly. So if I were to double click this real quick, it would bring up a page like this. And obviously, runway 27 is like always the runway we use. So I'm going to click that one. That one's looking pretty good right there. That's my start point. If I wanted to start over here, I could click there. If I wanted to start on the helipad, I could click there. I don't know why I would do that, but who knows? I'm a weirdo sometimes. But that gives you an opportunity to select it. Now, one of the cool things is if you press this little button right here that says ramp and runway, it'll give you the ability to pick a specific runway you want to start on. Like if you want to start on 27, for example, you could actually hit that. Now watch this. Hit this arrow, you can actually do a 3 nautical mile approach into the runway too, if that's something that you want to do. Something I just find kind of cool, if you ask me. Like I said, neat little feature there, neat little feature. All right, we'll go pick that spot again. At any point, I can click confirm, or I can hit back if I want. I'm going to say confirm. Now, weather customization is a snap. Now, if I press if I want to have a default here, I can click here and drag and make it all sorts of nasty. I love how convective is an option. That's neat. A precision IFR, non-precision, I can do clear weather. And I love how it's the same background. Like I said, that's a neat little detail they did. So if you want a few clouds. But one of the really cool things here is if you actually press the customize key and bring the screen up here, you can actually grab the real world weather just by hitting download. And it'll actually do that. It says, yeah, what is it going to do? And then it will populate this. Look at how detailed this is. This is every little detail of wind. Fortunately, it's actually a really good day to fly, so it makes my job a little bit easier. But the cool thing is, let's say I want to do this manually. So you come over here and you hit manually and you go, uh-oh, how am I supposed to clear this? That's why they have the button. And you can just click clear and go right back. Again, you can add cloud layers, you can add wind layers, you can control local temperature. Everything is pretty much what you would expect here, like on a particular thing. Now, the cool thing is you can actually make the weather that you pick change over time. So you can actually come over here and say, hey, the weather's getting better. You can even come down here and say, actually, the weather's getting really quick. Or you can set it to static, in which case it's going to basically stay the same. And you can actually adjust the variability around the region. This is such a cool feature. I absolutely love stuff like this. Like it's little details like this that put a smile on my face. But I'm going to say I'm done. I'm going to put some variation and we'll say it's, I don't know, gradually deteriorating. Why not? Press done. We have our airplane, we have our weather, time of day. With time of day, of course, again, it's a snap. You just can drag this anywhere you want. It'll kind of highlight it to show you what time it is when you kind of grab the different parts there. I like that. If you customize, you can even have it track the real world time. And again, you can see it set this way. If you do have an offset, which we do, you have to come in here and actually dial it in. Obviously, we're EST, so I got to come in here and do basically your EDT, sorry. EDT, so I got to put my 60-minute offset there, so it's the correct time of day and everything like that. But one of the cool things is that we actually have seasons now. So if I were to come in here, for example, and set it like this, you can't see it here, but in the sim, everything would be, nice fall looking and everything like that. Really, really cool stuff. But when you're done picking all this, one of the things I really love is when I hit this, it's going to say, do you want to do this? Let me take care of this so it doesn't get grumpy. All right, I made it happy. So as soon as you open it up, it's going to go ahead and load. Don't worry, I'll skip this part. I'll bring you to something that looks a little bit like this. One thing I think is really cool is you actually can have Austin Thompson come in and basically explain it all to you. I'm going to say no. But here we are. We're in the sim, and now we're ready to go. So a couple things you're going to have to kind of get used to, especially if you're coming from Flight Sim 2024. Much less of this game is done for you. When you push things and do things, it's expected that you do it. There are no quick shortcuts for certain components. You have to go find the altimeter setting. You have to reset your gyros. You have to set the engines and all correctly. And that's pretty cool. But there's another thing you have to be mindful of, and that's that the default view, if you right-click and drag, you can actually kind of move your head around. But let me show you a really cool trick. If you wheel your mouse wheel, you can zoom in, which makes it easier to find little buttons. But this is really cool, too. Let's say we go do something like this. Oh, God, I'm stuck. W. Immediately snaps you back to the correct position. Another cool trick, too, is if you have your keyboard handy, if you press your comma and your period key, you'll notice you can move your head around inside of here. Now, the cool thing is if you press the shift key in period, you notice you move really, really, really fast. If you hold the control key in period, you get this like super slow, dramatic kind of movement here, if that's what you're trying to go for. I don't know. I just find stuff like that fun. So again, just getting comfortable with the controls. There's other little tricks we can do too with our view. For example, if there's a view we like I think I'm a little backed up here. Let's say I want to use this as my default view. I can hold down the control on the keyboard and press the number 4, and that basically saves it. So if I were to press the number 4 on my numpad, do you see how it kind of brought me more forward again? And one of the reasons I really love that, and this is more of an airliner thing than anything, is if I want to do like backseato vision, I kind of call this like my backseato vision, I can do control 1 on the numpad. So now if I press W, it's default. If I press 4, it pushes me in. If I press 1, we jump in the back seat and we're ready to rock. Now, of course, some people are like, what about that walk around that Flight Sim has? We don't quite have that, but if you press the C key, you switch to basically this kind of free camera, and it's really easy to use. Arrows, period, comma, you can hold down control if you want that dramatic zoom. You can hold down shift if you want to get out of here. Whee! And again, that's all available and at your disposal really quickly and easily to use. And again, other things that I really, really like about X-Plane here. I gotta be careful with my controls there. They don't send you through the wall. So the other cool thing that for those of you who are transitioning to X-Plane or like, hey, I just want to learn a little more about this, is just everything is very clacky. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Lack of polish, I think, is a form of polish. It makes it feel more authentic to me. But all your trim controls, everything is kind of set by defaults. One of the things you got to watch out for is the parking brakes are a little goofy in this game. Depending on the airplane, the parking brake may require you to hold the brakes to disengage the parking brake. You'll know what I mean when you get it wrong. And we'll talk about that when we do a video on the Cirrus later. But for example, if I wanted to get this thing started, we're in fuel injected, so I'd go through all the fuel injection motions here. We'll turn on the bacon light to let everybody know where we're going. Very, very easy here. Going to go ahead and set that like that. We'll pop the fuel pump on. We're just maxing out our fuel pressure here. Nice. That's all we had to do. I'm going to go ahead and pull that out there. I'm going to crack this just a little bit. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. I'll go get it into the proper position. Clear prop. Clear prop. Nice. That was sweet. And now notice, it even gives you these little tooltips. It's reminding me, for example, the fact that my directional gyro is wrong. Now, the cool thing here is that there's a way to make it so that it does it automatically. If I were to go up to my options, I'll hit this one. Come back up here real quickly here. Remember that button we had earlier? We might as well take advantage of it. We'll come into here. You were looking for the command called sync mag. And you'll see this thing that says sync to magnetic north. And now this basically gives you the ability to properly set this. So if I press apply and I press done, if I were to crank this, do you see how it went boing? Basically instantly straightened. That's exactly what the kind of thing you want it to do. You can hear some radio. By the way, we don't press tilde. You press enter if you want to get this stuff. And as you can see, New Bedford, we're getting a distant, scratchy kind of call from them, sort of a thing like that. Go ahead and press the Alt key there. We're at 1,000 RPM. We're down here on the ground, though, so we should probably take a moment to go ahead and do a little bit of leaning, just like we would expect. And again, you can see the exhaust gas temperature responds immediately, which is exactly what we could kind of expect. Our temperatures are going to take a long time to come up. Our pressures are going to take a long time to come up. And then, of course, our GPS setting, one of the things that's great, and you're probably familiar with this from other sims, I can left click on this and it pops it out. But one of the really cool things is if you push this button, it becomes an external window. So remember that random screen I was telling you about? I can just go plop that on that other screen and leave it there the entire time if I wanted my GPS to go here. Yeah, we'll save that for another day, but you can see I have my 2 GPSs, my transponder, the good old S-Tech. I love the S-Tech. It's very easy to use. But that's basically it. Now, there's a couple other little things that are a little different here, too. And again, this is just getting started. Your view or look around button, sorry about the headache I just induced in everybody, as you can see, is a little more sensitive than you're probably used to, but that's okay. So one of the cool things here, and I don't know, I just get such a kick out of this. By the way, R and F on your keyboard makes it so you can stick your head up and down real quickly in these legs. I'm going to come up a little bit closer. Taxing is really different in this game. And it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's actually very authentic. So, for example, let's say I want to go ahead and get taxiing here. I'll go ahead and hide this real fast. I'm going to go ahead and disengage my parking brake. Notice, by the way, I did that with my brakes. I didn't do that by clicking on it. And you notice we're starting to roll forward, which is completely authentic. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a little bit of power, bring it back to 0. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to really, really hard kick the left rudder. Watch what happens. You see how the whole plane crouched and it jerked to one side? In X-Plane, you have a handy little feature is if you have rudder pedals that do not have toe brakes. If you gently apply the rudder, like I am now, let me look down so you can see it, what I mean by that, you'll notice it just kind of goes gentle. But if I push all the way, it actually pushes the brake down. Do you see how it pushes the brake down automatically? And that brake push is determined by how hard you push down on that rudder pedal. So in this case, I'm going pretty fast for a taxi here. Let's say I want to start coming here. We can use that custom view we made. Or remember this one? Remember this one? That's so cool, isn't it? I love how smooth it is. But we're going down this. I'm using just the rudder pedals. If I wanted to get off on alpha, well, actually, I am on alpha. If I wanted to jump onto 2.7 real quick, again, I could just stand on that brake real fast and get us into position. But we want to use the whole runway, right? And here we are. Whoa! See how the plane really dives when you hit that brake? I'm really feeling that front shock there. And you can see, look at how aggressively I can snap this plane into the wind here. And you can see it's sitting there real nice. It's exactly what I want, kind of a thing like that. Go ahead and set that brake. And you can see we're nicely kind of queued up into the wind there, like we would do our run-up. Now, the cool thing here is the run-up is basically going to be the same as you're familiar with any of our aircraft. I just find it, like I said, kind of easy. So let's go ahead and do our flip check. So I'll make sure our flaps are ready, which they are. Our lights, we're going to be using our taxi and nav lights. So just let everybody know we are. FLI instruments, we're going to take a quick little look here. That's looking good. That is, yeah, that's actually correct. That's good too. FLI, we're going to do our propeller. We don't have one. We're going to make sure our systems are good as far as our engine and stuff like that goes. All right, let's go ahead and kick up 1,700 revolutions per minute, comrades. And right there's about 1,700. You can see it's vibrating a little bit. We're bouncing around a little bit here. It's not too bad. You can see it's hitting our tail kind of funny. We go run through our usual magneto checks here. Go ahead and snap that. You can see it comes down a little bit. Back to both. It jumps back up smoothly. Back down there. You can see this very little drop. Go ahead and drop to idle. We'll see what our lovely engine wants to do this time. Not bad. Not bad. Oh, goodness. That's a low idle there. Everything else, though, is good to go. So I'm ready to go ahead and take off. And again, because this aircraft is configured the way that it is, when I want to get rid of the parking brake, I can just literally hit the brakes. Now, the cool thing is if I hit the brake button, you can see there's my brake button. I can also do it conventionally. Now, I got to give it a pretty good amount of zing here to get this thing going around the corner. And you can see we're just doing a nice little pivot, just like that. We'll go ahead and check the approach. My thumb is not nearly gentle enough with that particular control yet. I'm still kind of getting the hang of it. And you can see, just like a real 172, it kind of just sort of wanders. You know, the suspension, you know, I tap the brakes a little bit, and you can see the whole thing snaps around on you, just like the real one. All right, so lined up here. We're going to do the traffic pattern, and then we're going to call it a video kind of a thing. Go ahead and give it full power. All right, does a nice little crouch, and again, pretty aggressive to the, actually, I think it's a little too hard. This is one thing I think they didn't get right. A little too much torque. But one of the things I do know and appreciate is it's so easy to keep the center line. Golly, is it easy. Keep in mind we're in real-world weather today. There's our 55 knots. We lift up the front wheel. Plane jumps into the air. We're just going to look down at our directional gyro. Looks pretty good. I'll back off the rudder a little bit. Looks pretty good. Again, I'm just using the turning bank indicator and just kind of taking a look. One of the things that you notice immediately in this game that's, like I said, other flight sims, Prepare 3D and Flight Sim, is that the plane has got this looseness to it. What I mean by that is it feels like nothing is really supporting you, if that makes sense. You're not on any form of rails. Everything responds instantly. It responds smoothly. One of the things I always like to show is if you look at the wing, look at how much the wing bends. And again, you don't have an aerodynamic force until the wing's bent into the position it needs to be in. That's just awesome. And again, yes, I know there are wing flexes and other sims and everything like that. But this one just feels very authentic from someone who literally has quite a bit of time in this very, very, very type of airplane here. There's a lovely Wyndham there. The water looks a little weird. I'm not going to comment there. Go ahead and get ready for a traffic pattern. I'm noticing there's very little stabilization in terms of your actual, rudder control. You can see actually if I don't keep up with the pedals, so you kind of get one of these things going on. That is completely authentic to the real plane, which I absolutely love. Again, nobody's holding your hand, and like I said, I appreciate it. All right, take advantage of my Q, my E, my R, my F key. That's we're going out to sea here, so I got to kind of come back. And again, you can see if you don't catch it with the rudder right away, you have to pretty much do it. Otherwise, you get that kind of wobble. Very distinctive kind of thing. And there's about 1,200 feet. Need a little more altitude. I noticed in the turn, look at how much lift we have in the turn. Very authentic. There we go. It's about east. Go ahead and pull that throttle back. The cool thing, of course, with a 172, this is an SP. This is I call this the big 172. It's not the big one. It is not a big 172. It just happens to be a very high-powered one. Looking out the window, we're not exactly what I consider to be a parallel with a runway there. So we'll go ahead and kind of swing around that way. That's looking a little better. And again, extremely easy to maintain that altitude. Reduce the power a little bit. Just looking out that window, just kind of taking it in. I love the way everything moves. And again, they have this new feature too that kind of bounces your head. It's very, very traditional. One of the things you really appreciate at a moment is when we do go to settle this thing down. What happened to Home Depot? I'm not going to worry about it too much. There we go. It's a beam the numbers. Back the throttle out. 2 clicks and flaps. And of course, look at the nose. Oh my goodness. Flaps. That was an incredible amount of nose up movement. And that's very authentic to the real one. If you don't catch that quick, it will catch you. That's just kind of how that goes. It's incredible. All right, we're going to kind of head back out here. And it's going to be about right there. We're a little high, but that's not going to hurt anybody kind of a thing. Take that nice gentle turn. You always give it a couple RPM on a 172 when you take the turn, because again, you're going to lose stuff because of the drag. You tend to sink quick. All right, swinging around to the north. Again, we got to catch it with the rudder. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. We are still way too high here. Bring the nose down a little bit. We can actually get that last click of flaps in. But generally, when it comes to flaps, I like to get my flaps in on final. But again, with 500 feet to go, that's when your flaps should be in position. So 700 feet, we've got to get that last click of flaps in. All right, here we go. All right. Woo, a lot of left rudder here. That's for me. I told you we were high. All right, Wyndham, of course, for those of you who have not flown into it in the real world, it is an uphill runway. And you always see the diagram of uphill runways, like in books and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, look at that. It's an optical illusion. It's very real, and it's very scary. All right, so I'm about 500 feet on the ground. That's about 250 feet to go. I'm still a little high, but that's perfectly fine. You can see we got a little bit of a crosswind. We're right on speed here. We're very, 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 very stable. I could probably add a little bit more. Getting a little bit of that low altitude buffet. You can feel the wind shifting from the wind we had to the wind that's on the ground. Notice we lost almost 4 or 5 knots before anything happened. See a little kick right there from the little power addition? Very authentic. All right, we got plenty of runway. The runway's made at this point. We can just kind of settle down. You can see it's a little bit wet from this morning, but that's okay. Nose gets real heavy, and you can see this transition here is very, very different. Plane's really going to run out of energy, and you can see we settle right there. I'm going to get a little bit of left aileron in to try to keep us centered. And I'm just going to gently hit the brakes. And again, you can see all that nasty wetness all over the runway. And that was glorious. And another thing that's kind of fun, too, is if you want to enjoy what you just did, try pressing Alt-R on your keyboard. And what you can actually do is you can actually get an instant replay. And now you can see how garbage my landing was, really from the side. You just rewind it. I always like to do this. It's just me being a nerd. All right, let's see how we actually did. So that was definitely a little fast for our weight here. Oh, that looked way worse than it actually was because there's no bounce in the pro wheel there. And again, it's great. But as you can see, it's already screaming at me that my directional gyro is no longer aligned, which makes sense if you think about it, because when I pull my throttle to idle, there wasn't enough pressure to even keep my attitude indicator straight anymore. And that's just kind of one of those little details. It's like, yes, you got that right. I love it. So at this point, you should be pretty comfortable with X-Plane 12. One of the things that always blew my mind when I first used X-Plane is to get the menu, you reach your mouse to the top of the screen, it just sort of appears. Like if I go to plugins, I can show, I got my Air plugin, that's for some instruments and stuff like that. But the cool thing is, at any point, I can actually come up here, and if you want it to be a little silly, you can actually push this button, and you can actually have the AI fly your plane. I don't know why it's at this altitude flying my plane. But, I'm not arguing. It's just kind of one of those things. Oh, it's even like making radio calls and everything like that. You got to admit, that's kind of fun. And at any point, I can push this button to basically take over and I'm back in charge. It's me in charge now. One more thing I will share. And again, this has already been a pretty long video. But at this point, you should be like, hey, I think I can fiddle with this now. If you press the M key on your keyboard, it's going to bring the map up. One thing I just want to throw out real quick about the map is there's different modes. One of the things I like to do is if you put on high on route mode, it makes it a little bit easier to see things.
Turn right, heading 050.
Yeah, what if I switch your frequency? Haha, I can't talk to me anymore. But if you press this button here, it'll actually center on you. And if you press this button, it'll actually make it so it is the the correct method, none of this north-up business, which makes it much easier to kind of find what you want. But one of the things that's really cool is if you click on stuff on this map, it'll actually take you to like an options page. So if you want to land on one of these, you just click on it and you just press final approach like that, and it takes you there. You also get things like frequencies, and it's really, really clever and really well done. And again, at any point, you can always click your plane. You can do some offy things. Oh gosh, it's a twister. It's a twist. You know what I mean. And of course, if you want it to come a little bit lower, you can just crank that in. It's just, I love that and how flexible that is. And it just makes it so much more fun. So hopefully this is a good introduction to X-Plane. Like I said, those are just kind of the basics. I've been flying X-Plane since X-Plane 7, if you're curious. People always say, what's the difference? Why would I do X-Plane, stuff like that? For me, it's the flight model more than it's anything. I think it's the closest that I can get. I think the folks who make DCS have an excellent flight model as well. These folks really have a nice flight model, especially when you start getting into like kind of the nitty-gritty little stuff. There's no rails. It feels right. And as somebody who flies, this is kind of what I sort of think of. And this is a lot of the reasons why I run X-Plane 12. But other than that, enjoy.